Good morning. Thank you for joining me. I want to talk a little bit about fallacies. Fallacies are generally considered the errors in reasoning, in kind of when we analyze our reasoning, there are certain parts or modules, if you will, which we can put into an argument, and here's the key part, which do not guarantee logical certainty, right? However, I will argue, and I'm doing this for the sake of the commons, for the sake of building the commons, of understanding each other. There are aspects of fallacies which have a kind of reason to them. Not logical reason, not certainty, but they have a seed of truth to them. That if we are careful and if we are caring, we can unearth and polish and bring to life in a logical form. So, for instance, the one that I was thinking of this morning was the slippery slope. In a strange way, all arguments are a slippery slope because they are saying that if you have these propositions, then the conclusion is inevitable. You slip to the inevitable conclusion. The question is do you have an argument that on an analytical basis is incomplete in their stages, or in which has a stage that doesn't truly belong? Another way to think about fallacies, to rabbit trail for just a second, though it's very, very applicable, is that when you commit a fallacy, it is generally because you are jumping to another realm of analysis, or another level of analysis, another area of thought, without adequately transitioning to it. You are bringing an intuition to the front about, it's often an intuition, because it is not a analytical process. If you've committed a fallacy, you've not been using an analytical process, or you've not been filtering through an analytical process. So often that comes in the form of intuition, that you feel that this, to give an example from my own past, this postmodern movement is going to do damage. And so you build arguments against postmodernism based off of this feeling. And you do your best to build an argument. But if you analyze it, you discover that the steps you've taken to build your argument are not fully acceptable to logic, to reason. At least they often are not. I'm not saying you can't build a good argument against postmodernism necessarily, but I am saying that there are stages. What am I talking about? I'm trying to say that there is a kind of reason that produces fallacies. And it doesn't mean the fallacies are valid in their analytical form. But it does mean that another faculty has given you an insight. But you have to treat that insight in the proper way, under the rules of the realm you found it in. So if I have a fear of postmodernism, as I did some 15, 20 years ago in college, 20, I guess 15, 20, yeah. Anyway, if I have that, what is happening is not that I've had a deep analytical analysis. I know that's synonym, or anyway. It's not that I've deeply analyzed postmodernism. It's that I can see it as a system, and get a general idea of it, a general holistic sense, like a map, like an image. In other words, non-linear. Doesn't mean I'm right. You have to bring the analytical in to bear to clarify such a vision, right? But that is not to say that the vision is 100% wrong, as many aspects of philosophy have tried to say. Not all, but many types of philosophy have tried to say, including science. And yes, I would say science and philosophy overlap, and I don't think you can not overlap them as much as you might not want to. Anyway, so to get to the point quickly, Matthew. Fallacies give you a tool. They are a different kind of tool than a logical tool, than an analytical tool, but they are a tool. And if we don't use them, we are missing out on something that the analytical itself cannot give us, which is something like a connection point to people, to their intuitions. That's a powerful thing. Not as a tool to use against them, as is often the case, and call somebody fearful or a phobe of some sort. But that alarm bells are going off, man. And maybe they're wrong, but if you do not attempt to understand the root, and here's my point, here's the overall point of this ramble. If you do not endeavor to understand the overall point of an intuition, of another person's intuition, you will fail to connect with them. Because when you are dealing with your intuition, you are dealing with something far closer to the metaphorical heart of a person than to any logical reasoning faculty or process, which can be quite two-dimensional. Even if it's more accurate, it flattens things, so that it's more accurate in a mechanical way, but it's less accurate in a social way. And if we are to build a commons, we're so close to civil war in some ways. I don't know if it'll actually burst out into warfare, like armies against each other, but I would almost not be surprised, regardless of who wins the next election. I don't think it'll happen. But if it happened, I'd be like, yep, I thought that might happen. I just don't. That's a contradiction. I just said I don't think it'll happen. I have an intuition, okay? I have an intuition. And you can choose to ignore that intuition, of course. Many people would. But I have an intuition that our country is at a boiling point. Is it at such a high boil that we will throw away our society in the name of defeating our enemies? And see, that's the problem. That's the problem. That's a problem in a nutshell. That's why intuitions are useful, even if it doesn't mean that even if it is not the case that we're about to erupt into civil war. The fear that we might be about to erupt into civil war, even if it itself is an irrational conclusion, it may be an analogical conclusion. In other words, civil war as an analogy for how bad things could get in our country, in our society. And with losses, not perhaps as bloody, not as perhaps extreme, but there's an intuition there. And if we do not listen to our intuitions, all we are doing is putting little tiny pieces together in a row, and we're never looking at the overall picture. Or at least we get the sense we are, of course, but we're not. We can't grasp the whole without grasping the whole. And when you grasp the whole, you lose sight of the parts. When you jump back to the parts, you lose sight of the whole. So you jump back to the whole, and then you lose sight of the parts. And you go back and forth because it helps, because they feed off of each other. They build each other. The holistic tells the particular what part to acknowledge and emphasize. And then you go back, or you should try to go back to the holistic to get another holistic view and go, okay, did that work out? How does it feel? How does the system feel? Why are you trusting your feelings? Aren't feelings irrational? Aren't they fallacious? Well, not if you want to get a sense of the whole. You need to go back and build a good model, a good rational model. Yes, free of fallacies. But the fallacies are telling you something. The intuitions behind the fallacies, not the fallacies themselves. You have to dig into them. And that takes wisdom, right? So what I'm saying is that from the intuition that builds a fallacy, a wise man can discover, or woman, of course, can discover the true roots of the issue. Roots that may go deep and may not be surface and may be true, and that we ourselves may be blind to because we haven't got the right holistic view of the problem, because we're in our bubble, because we're all in bubbles. The internet is a bubble creating machine. I don't know why it is, but it is. I think it's because it's so unpersonal. It's so impersonal that we don't have an intuitive connection to the person on the other side of the screen. We just feel like we're venting absolute phrases at each other. We're coding. And coding is absolute, right? Everything we say in a online forum is in this coded absolute form. Maybe that's it. I'm speculating. Okay, I should probably get into work. Thank you for your time. So next time a fallacy comes up, don't just dismiss it. Try to dig deep and find out what it is rooted in. If the other person is willing, of course. All right. Thank you for your time.